Before anyone started whispering about her disappearance, before the cancellations and the silence, Tanya Tucker was just a kid in a dusty Texas town who refused to blend in. What makes her story so striking is that from the very beginning, there was nothing ordinary about her. Not the way she listened to music, not the way she talked about her future, and definitely not the way she sang. Her upbringing in Seminole and later Wilcox wasn't glamorous, but it was loud with the soundtrack of country radio, and Tanya soaked up every note like she was training for a stage she hadn't even seen yet. While other kids her age were reciting playground rhymes, Tanya was mimicking voices like Loretta Lynn and Tammy Wynette, with a seriousness far beyond her years. It wasn't just talent, it was insistence. Every family member who knew her back then says the same thing. She didn't merely want to sing, she pushed for it. She pressured her dad, Bo Tucker, to take her to recording studios and talent contests, and she treated every rehearsal like it was her ticket out of a small-town life. That relentless drive is what set the foundation for everything that came later. The fame, the chaos, the reinventions, and eventually, the unsettling quiet that fans are still trying to understand. But long before the mystery, the world was introduced to a 13-year-old with the confidence of a seasoned performer. When Tanya recorded Delta Dawn, it wasn't supposed to become a cultural shockwave. The song had already floated around Nashville, but nobody had sung it in a way that made people stop in their tracks. Then came this teenage girl with a voice that somehow carried heartache, grit, and a lifetime's worth of stories. And almost overnight, Tanya Tucker went from a kid begging for studio time to a national sensation. Radio stations couldn't get enough of her. Newspapers loved the angle of the child with the grown woman voice. But the most interesting part wasn't the novelty. It was how people reacted to her tone. It didn't sound coached. It didn't sound sweet or polished the way child performers usually did. It sounded lived in. How could a 13-year-old deliver a song with more emotion than half the grown artists in Nashville? That question alone created buzz, curiosity, and momentum. And that momentum didn't slow down. Before she could even enjoy being a teenager, Tanya was pushed into the whirlwind of the music industry. Tours, managers, interviews, photo shoots. Yet through it all, she carried herself with a confidence that felt almost unreal for someone so young. She knew she didn't fit the stereotype. She wasn't shy or cookie cutter. She didn't soften her image to match her age. Instead, she leaned into what made her different, and audiences could feel that rawness instantly. This early rise is critical to understanding everything that came after. Tanya Tucker wasn't manufactured. She wasn't built by a label or molded into something marketable. She stormed into the spotlight through raw talent and sheer determination. And because her ascent was so unconventional, it created a mythos around her, one that years later would feed the speculation, the theories, and the questions about where she's gone now. But Tanya's early stardom wasn't just about a single breakout song. It was the beginning of a pattern she would repeat throughout her life, breaking expectations, surprising the industry, and refusing to be put in a box. And that pattern becomes even clearer when you look at what she did next. If Delta Dawn lit the fuse, everything that followed turned Tanya Tucker into an unstoppable force. And the fascinating part is that her rise didn't slow as she grew older. It intensified. As soon as the industry realized she wasn't a one-song wonder, Tanya started releasing track after track that pushed boundaries for someone her age. Songs like Blood Red and Going Down, What's Your Mama's Name, and Would You Lay With Me in a Field of Stone weren't cute little teen tunes. They were heavy, emotional stories, dealing with themes most adults barely had the nerve to touch. But Tanya didn't shy away from them. She embraced them with a kind of fearless confidence that made older artists double-take. Instead of softening her sound to match her youth, she leaned even harder into the grit. That boldness instantly separated her from every other performer in Nashville. You could hear a Tanya song playing on the radio and know it was her within 2 seconds. The visual side of her rise only added fuel to the fire. In photo shoots, she never looked timid or wide-eyed. She looked defiant. Big hair, sharp eyes, boots planted firmly like she ran the room. Nashville had never seen a teenager present herself that way. And while some executives weren't sure how to market a young girl with that level of intensity, fans loved it. They gravitated toward her because she didn't pretend to be older or younger. She just was who she was, unapologetically. This authenticity helped her cross into mainstream pop culture long before country artists were commonly doing that. By the late 70s, Tanya wasn't just a country star anymore. She was appearing on major television shows, gracing magazine covers, and drawing attention from fans who didn't even listen to country music. That kind of crossover success was rare for women in the genre, especially teenagers, and it pushed Tanya into a league of her own. But that level of attention also created a different kind of pressure. The more she broke barriers, the more people expected of her. The labels wanted new hits. The media wanted juicy interviews. Fans expected her to stay the bold, fearless girl with the raspy voice and rebellious energy. And Tanya, still barely out of childhood, was trying to live up to all of it. Despite those pressures, she didn't buckle. Instead, she threw herself deeper into the life that fame had built around her. She embraced the image of the country wildcard. She pushed back against rules. She ran toward opportunities that terrified others. She said yes when others hesitated. It was as if she understood that her window of freedom was small, and she wanted to squeeze every moment out of it. But that fierce independence came with a cost. As she moved into her late teens, the very boldness that made her a star started steering her toward a lifestyle filled with volatility, chaos, and risk. Reporters saw a girl becoming a woman under the harshest possible spotlight. The industry watched with a mix of admiration and concern. Fans adored her, but even they sensed a storm forming on the horizon. And that storm would become the defining challenge of her early adult years, the period when Tanya Tucker's rebellious spark transformed into something much more dangerous, unpredictable, and ultimately pivotal to the mysteries surrounding her later disappearance. The momentum Tanya built as a teen didn't slow down, it surged. But that same momentum carried her straight into a new phase of her life, one where childhood confidence shifted into adult rebellion, and the price of fame became harder to ignore. By the time she entered her early 20s, that spark everyone admired had turned into something far more volatile. The pressure, the expectations, the constant need to be on. It all began weighing down on her in ways nobody on the outside could fully understand. And as her fame grew louder, so did the chaos behind it. The industry expected her to evolve gracefully, but Tanya wasn't built for quiet transitions. She stepped into adulthood like she stepped into every song, full force, unfiltered, and ready for whatever came next. That attitude made her magnetic, but it also pulled her into circles where life moved fast and the nights blurred together. Nashville wanted polished stars who played by the rules. Tanya wanted none of that. She didn't want to be tamed. She didn't want to dilute the raw edge that made her who she was. And she definitely didn't want to become the industry's idea of the perfect female country artist. Her relationship with Glenn Campbell only amplified that tension. The two of them together became a lightning rod for the tabloids, a pairing so intense and dramatic that reporters could barely keep up. Their whirlwind romance captured headlines for all the wrong reasons: fights, reconciliations, rumors, and behavior that fueled endless speculation. Fans were mesmerized by the passion, but behind the scenes, it was a storm swallowing them both. The intensity of their relationship mirrored Tanya's life at the time: unpredictable, fiery, and impossible to ignore. And through all this, the rumors began piling up. Whispers about substance struggles, late-night parties, unpredictable behavior. None of it was fully confirmed, but the stories spread fast. Some said she was spiraling. Others said she was simply living wild in a world that encouraged excess. The truth, as always with Tanya, wasn't simple. She was battling the same temptations that swallowed other young stars, but she was doing it while carrying decades of expectations on her shoulders. The 1980s became a chapter defined by contradictions. She was still recording hits, still drawing crowds, still proving she had a voice stronger than any rumor. Songs like Texas, When I Die, and Love Me Like You Used To reminded everyone that she wasn't just a tabloid figure. She was still one of the most powerful vocalists in the business. But behind those performances, the cracks were forming. Some promoters hesitated to book her, unsure if she'd show up. Some radio stations pulled back. The industry didn't know whether to crown her an outlaw queen or distance itself from the chaos. Yet even at her lowest moments, Tanya had something most artists never possess: a relentless will to survive. She never fully disappeared. She never let the mistakes define her. Instead, every time it looked like she might fall apart completely, she found a way to claw her way back into the spotlight. Fans didn't just admire her voice, they admired her resilience. She wasn't trying to be perfect. She wasn't trying to protect an image. She was messy, real, and undeniably human. That raw honesty, both her downfall and her strength, set the stage for what came next. Because just when the industry thought she was too unpredictable to rely on, Tanya Tucker did what she always did best. She shocked everyone by rising again. Coming back from the edge is hard for any artist, but Tanya didn't just return, she rebuilt herself. And what made this phase of her life so remarkable was how naturally she transformed chaos into clarity, turning scandals into stepping stones and mistakes into momentum. The same grit that launched her career as a teenager now became the force that carried her into a new era, one where the world stopped focusing on her controversies and started remembering exactly why she became a star in the first place. As the 1980s came to a close, Tanya made a shift that stunned critics. She traded the whirlwind lifestyle for a more focused, reflective approach to her music. And it showed. Albums like Girls Like Me and songs such as If It Don't Come Easy or Strong Enough to Bend revealed a different side of her. Still powerful, still gritty, but now tempered with lived experience. She wasn't singing from imagination anymore. She was singing from survival. The industry, which once hesitated to stand beside her, began cheering her on. Awards followed, nominations stacked up, and Tanya reclaimed her place in Nashville. Not as the teenage prodigy or the headline-making rebel, but as a seasoned artist with a voice shaped by life itself. Her music carried scars, and people connected to that authenticity in ways polished stars could never replicate. But Tanya was never one to stay in one lane. As the 2000s reshaped country music into a more pop-leaning genre, she once again found herself at a crossroads. Instead of chasing trends, she leaned harder into her identity, touring, recording, and embracing the legacy she had built over decades. The world might have changed around her, but Tanya stayed Tanya. And for her fans, that loyalty mattered. Then came 2019, the year that rewrote her entire story. Partnering with Brandi Carlile and Shooter Jennings, she released While I'm Livin', an album unlike anything she had ever done. It wasn't flashy or commercial, it was raw, personal, and brutally honest. Every lyric felt like a confession, every melody like a memory she was finally ready to share. When she sang Bring My Flowers Now, it felt like she was opening a window into her soul. Critics didn't just praise the album, they hailed it as a masterpiece. And the Grammys agreed. Tanya won Best Country Album and Best Country Song, achievements many believed she deserved decades earlier. For her fans, it felt like long overdue justice. For Tanya, it was proof that she had outlasted every rumor, every scandal, every setback. She stood on the biggest stage in music and finally held the recognition she had fought for her entire life. But as triumphant as that moment was, it also marked the beginning of something unexpected. Because just when she was poised to enjoy her resurgence, something shifted. Appearances slowed, communication faded, cancellations became more frequent, and slowly, almost quietly, Tanya Tucker, one of the most resilient women in country music, began slipping out of the spotlight again. This time, though, it wasn't chaos pulling her away. It wasn't scandal. It wasn't industry pressure. It was something far more mysterious. And what happened next left fans wondering if this retreat was a choice, a necessity, or the start of a new chapter she wasn't ready to explain. Her Grammy triumph should have been the beginning of a new golden era, but instead, it became the last time many fans saw Tanya Tucker with the same spark the world has. And this is where the story takes a turn that feels different from every rise and fall she'd experienced before. Because unlike the chaos of the past, unlike the tabloid feuds, the whirlwind romances, or the unpredictable behavior, this time, Tanya didn't fall. She faded. After the success of While I'm Livin', Tanya's schedule initially surged. Interviews, televised performances, renewed touring, and media appearances that introduced her to a brand new generation. But as months went by, the pace slowed. People noticed it gently at first. A canceled show here, a postponed appearance there, a delay attributed to vocal fatigue. The statement about exhaustion. Nothing alarming, nothing unusual for an artist with decades of wear on her voice. But then the gap widened. Tanya, who had always been unapologetically present, loud, fiery, and fiercely connected to her fans, started disappearing from the public eye in ways that didn't feel intentional. The woman who once shared everything, who thrived in the spotlight even when it burned her, suddenly went silent. Not dramatically, not with some explosive announcement, just quietly. That's when speculation began. Some whispered about health issues, wondering if years of touring and a lifetime of pushing herself had finally taken a toll. Others pointed to comments from those close to her, small mentions that she had been resting, that she needed time, that she wasn't feeling her best. None of it confirmed, none of it denied. Just enough uncertainty to make fans worry. There were rumors that she suffered a respiratory issue. Others believed she experienced complications related to surgery. Some speculated about mental health, stress, burnout, or emotional exhaustion after a career spent fighting, surviving, and reinventing herself. And then there were stories linking her retreat to injuries she'd sustained in the years prior. But without Tanya addressing it directly, everything lived in a gray space between truth and guesswork. But the silence wasn't just about health. Something else was changing. Her team became more tight-lipped. Social media posts slowed. Updates grew vague. Fans who attended scheduled concerts sometimes arrived only to learn the performance had been canceled at the last minute. And while cancellations had happened sporadically throughout her career, this pattern felt different. There was a consistency to the inconsistency. Some insiders hinted she was dealing with chronic pain. Others said she wasn't physically up to long shows. There were even whispers that Tanya hadn't fully adjusted to the pressure of her comeback, that the Grammy spotlight, after years of industry distance, was overwhelming in ways she hadn't expected. None of these possibilities paint Tanya as weak. In fact, the opposite is true. After enduring a lifetime of scrutiny and reinvention, stepping back might have been the strongest, most grounded decision she could have made. But because she never explained it publicly, fans fill the silence with concern. And that silence creates the emotional pivot into the next chapter. The question everyone is still asking today: where is Tanya Tucker now? And what is really going on behind the scenes? The conversation about Tanya today feels different from the speculation of the past. Less judgment, more genuine worry. And maybe that's because Tanya Tucker has given the world something rare: absolute vulnerability. She's lived every chapter of her life out loud, and now her quiet has weight. It means something. It feels intentional, even if the reasons behind it remain unspoken. What we do know is this: Tanya hasn't vanished entirely, but she has stepped into a version of life where her time is carefully chosen, where she prioritizes privacy, family, and personal well-being over the relentless grind of touring. She's appeared occasionally, select shows, festival dates, award events, but each appearance feels measured, almost curated. She doesn't move with the speed she once did, nor does she chase the industry with the same fire. Instead, she shows up when she wants to, on her terms. For an artist who's been performing since childhood, this shift is monumental. Sources close to her have hinted that she's focusing heavily on health, both physical and emotional. After decades of pushing through exhaustion, pain, and pressure, Tanya has finally allowed herself room to breathe. And for many artists of her generation, especially those who started young, this type of reset isn't unusual. It's necessary. Fans who've seen her more recently describe her as warm, reflective, and appreciative. Not frail, not defeated, just different. Calmer, more grounded. As if she finally built a space in her life that the 13-year-old prodigy never had the chance to experience. But stepping back doesn't mean stepping away from music. Tanya continues writing. She continues recording selectively. She remains deeply connected to a trusted circle of musicians, particularly Brandi Carlile, who has become both collaborator and protector of Tanya's legacy. Industry insiders have mentioned ongoing studio work, conversations about a follow-up to While I'm Livin', and a continued desire from Tanya to capture stories she hasn't told yet. She's also focusing on the business of her legacy, archival projects, curated releases, and material that cements her place as one of country music's most influential women. In many ways, this phase of her life mirrors the greats who transitioned from constant performance to long-term legacy building. But the biggest question remains: will Tanya Tucker fully return? The truth is complicated. Some believe she will, slowly, selectively, when she feels ready. Others think her quiet era is the new normal, a period where she chooses moments rather than schedules, peace rather than pressure. Yet one thing is certain. Tanya Tucker doesn't owe the world an explanation. She's survived fame, scandal, addiction rumors, heartbreak, reinvention, and the entire weight of being a child star thrust into an adult world. If she wants stillness now, she's earned it. Her legacy is already carved into the history of country music. Loud, unpolished, unforgettable. And whether she returns with another album, another tour, or simply chooses to live out her days in a quieter rhythm, Tanya Tucker has already done what most artists dream of. She became immortal while she was still here to watch it happen. And once you understand how intentionally Tanya has stepped back, it becomes easier to see why the unanswered questions surrounding her life have only grown louder. Because when an artist who once lived with such wild transparency suddenly embraces silence, the world starts filling in the blanks on its own. And that's exactly what has happened over the last few years. As Tanya eased into her quieter chapter, fans began noticing inconsistencies, small things that didn't match the public picture. Photos would appear where Tanya looked vibrant at one event, then noticeably absent from the next. Interviews hinted at projects happening behind the scenes, yet months would pass without updates. Some insiders suggested she was simply choosing her peace. Others said her body wasn't keeping up with the demands of travel and performance. And every time a cancellation was announced, speculation flickered again. But what made the rumors grow wasn't just her absence. It was the fact that Tanya has always been unpredictable. She has never played by industry rules, never followed the expected path. In her youth, that unpredictability fueled tabloid headlines. But now, it fuels mystery. One rumor suggests she experienced ongoing complications from an old injury, something she'd quietly dealt with for years. Another claims she may have faced a private health scare around the time touring slowed down. And though none of these had been confirmed, the pattern of infrequent appearances makes people wonder if she's managing something she simply doesn't want publicized. Then there's the emotional side. Some believe the intense spotlight of her Grammy comeback brought pressure she wasn't prepared for. When she won, she didn't just reclaim her rightful place in country music. She was suddenly thrust onto stages, cameras, and media platforms that demanded constant energy. For someone who'd already lived several lifetimes by then, that level of attention might have been overwhelming. Even friends have hinted that Tanya prefers small circles these days, choosing comfort over chaos. Others speculate about her personal relationships, saying she's kept a tight boundary around who gets access to her. There's been online talk about shifts within her inner circle, new people becoming closer, older connections fading out. None of it confirmed, of course, but enough to raise eyebrows. And naturally, as with any celebrity who pulls away, darker rumors emerged online. Some suggested she faced emotional struggles. Others whispered about long-term recovery or medical treatment she's never talked about. But again, these are unverified conversations coming from the outside looking in. What makes all this so compelling is the contrast between Tanya's history and her present. She's a woman who once shared every raw moment, every heartbreak, every triumph, every mistake. Now, she shares nothing she doesn't choose to share. And that shift makes the remaining silence feel intentional. It also sets the stage for the final piece of her story. The legacy she's building in the background, the moves she's making quietly, and the future she may be preparing for, even if the world can't see it yet. Because behind every rumor, behind every theory, behind every unexpected disappearance, there's one truth Tanya has earned. She gets to write her own ending, her own way. And the real question isn't what she's hiding. It's what she might reveal when she's ready. And that's why, despite all the mystery surrounding her current life, one thing remains absolutely clear. Tanya Tucker's legacy isn't defined by her recent silence. It's defined by everything she did before it, everything she survived, and everything she reshaped in American music. Her impact stretches far beyond her hits. Tanya didn't just break through at 13, she shattered every barrier placed in front of her. She proved that a young girl could sing about adult realities with emotional depth. She proved that country music could be messy, flawed, vulnerable, and shockingly honest. And she proved that reinvention isn't a weakness, it's a weapon. Every artist who came after her owes a piece of their freedom to the path she carved. The rawness of Miranda Lambert, the rebellion of Gretchen Wilson, the soulfulness of Brandi Carlile, the unapologetic edge of modern country women. Tanya walked through fire so they could walk through doors. And even now, while she moves more quietly, her influence keeps expanding. Her comeback album, While I'm Livin', didn't just revive her career, it rewrote her image. It showed the world a woman who had outlived her critics, defied expectations, and created something timeless. Winning the Grammy wasn't about validation. It was confirmation that Tanya's voice had never truly disappeared. It had just been waiting for the world to catch up. But there's an even deeper reason her legacy endures. Tanya Tucker never pretended to be perfect. She never sanitized her past, never rewrote her mistakes. She carried them openly, fearlessly, and unashamedly. And that kind of honesty gives her music a power most artists never achieve. This is why, no matter what she chooses next, retirement, selective performances, another album, or complete privacy, her legacy remains secure. She doesn't need to prove anything. She doesn't need to chase trends. She doesn't need to compete. She has already become the kind of artist whose influence grows even in absence. And her quietness now almost amplifies her myth. The less she speaks, the more people remember. The fewer appearances she makes, the more valuable each one becomes. The more she steps away from the spotlight, the more her decades in it shine. Some fans believe her silence is temporary, that she's planning something big, that the next reveal will be a surprise album or a final tour. Others think she's settled into a well-deserved, peaceful chapter. But regardless of which theory is true, her legacy already stands untouched, because Tanya Tucker's story isn't about the moments she disappeared. It's about the time she returned, stronger every single time. She's a survivor, a pioneer, a legend whose voice changed the course of country music. And whether she rises again with another reinvention or keeps her life tucked away in the quiet places she's grown to love, one thing is certain: Tanya Tucker didn't just make history, she became it. Celebrate it.